Hello, and welcome to Lights Out. I'm your hostess with the mostest ghosties, Sylvia Shults. So who says ghost hunting always has to be serious business? Not Luke Naliborski. He has a great time poking around the unknown. He's written several books about it, too. The Lighter Side of Darkness, Ghosts Never Say Boo, First-Hand Accounts of the Supernatural, and Lights Out, more true tales of ghosts from the lighter side of darkness. I caught up with Luke when we were both at the haunted Lincoln Theater in Decatur, and he shared a couple of stories with me. Let's chat with the author of Lights Out as we go Lights Out.
When I was a kid, it was in the probably the late 80s, and I used to have to walk to school every day, which I know you hear that all the time, but I did.
I did too.
Yeah. And there was this house that I had to pass every day, and it was catty corner from our house. It was an old house. Nobody ever lived there or anything like that. And at least not that I remember. People living there. It was vacant most of the time. And at one point, one of the local charity groups came in and turned it into an actual haunted house.
Oh.
And, it was a thing where they were setting up. It was during the Halloween season, and they were going to raise money for their charity through it. But I know that while they were setting it up, a lot of things were happening to them. That they started saying that this house was really haunted. And even as a kid, when I read that, I kind of thought, well, maybe they're just saying that, making it up to get people there. And but they were talking about how they would build framing for walls, and the next day they'd come in, all the frames would be taken down. Or, they would leave and the doors would be locked, come back and they'd be open, things like that. So after the haunted house came and gone, they had left a candle in one of the lower first floor windows. So every day I would walk to school and I'd always see that candle in the window. Well, there was one day I was walking home and for some reason I would just always look at the window to see this candle. It was nothing special, but just something to look at.
That,
yeah. So I was walking past and I didn't see the candle in the first window anymore. So I'm kind of that's weird. And I look up and it's in one of the second story windows. So now the place has always been empty, it's always been vacant, and so I kind of, that's weird, but kept walking. And it's probably about 2 weeks later that I was coming home from school, and I looked up in that second floor window, and the candle wasn't there anymore, and it wasn't back in the first floor window. I just didn't see it. So that night, I was sitting in the living room watching TV, and we had one of those big family windows, and if you look out our family window, you can look right at this house. So as I was watching TV or something, and kind of looked out the window, and from the basement window of this house, I could see a light. It was kind of a flickering light. So I was watching it, and then all of a sudden, you could see a candle flame coming into the window, and then away from the window. And it was actually stairs. There's stairs where that window is. So the flame was going down the stairs as if somebody was holding it. And, that totally freaked me out, because it shouldn't have been there. Now, 2 weeks after that, there was a guy out in the yard. It was a really big lot, and he was cutting down some trees. And he had all of the wood stacked up, and we thought, well, maybe somebody was staying there now or whatever. So we ended up, my stepdad had sent us over and wanted us to get some of the firewood for our fireplace. So we went to the door and started knocking on the door. And we heard somebody walking to the door. You hear him walking across the kitchen floor, but nobody would ever answer the door. And then you knock again, and you would hear the footsteps coming again, but we never heard the footsteps going away. So it was always coming to the door, but never leaving the door, but never answering the door either. So, my brother and I kind of got freaked out, so we took off running back home. And the following weekend, we saw the guy out in the yard cutting wood again, so we went over there and asked him if we could get some of the firewood. And he's like, oh yeah, sure. And we said, yeah, we knocked on the door to try to see if we could talk to you about getting firewood last week. And he's like, nobody lives here. And we said, well, we kept hearing somebody walking to the door, and he just smiled, and that was all he would do. He wouldn't say anything, but he knew, And that was my first run-in with an actual paranormal experience. I used to read those ghost books all the time and things like that, and the old scary story books that they used to get at the school library. And things like that I used to read, so I really got into the ghost stories that way. But this was probably my first actual experience.
Cool. So how did you get into this? How did you start doing the tours?
Well, in 2001, my wife and I were celebrating our first anniversary, and for a gift from her bridesmaids, they had bought us a stay at the Terra Point Cottages up in Grafton. And I had heard about this store in Alton that sold ghost books and history books and things like that. And so I told my wife, when we go to Grafton, I want to stop inside the store, because I really enjoyed reading that stuff. So then we got into the store, and I was looking around. I ended up picking up a couple books, and I set them down on the counter to pay for them. And here the guy behind the counter brings me up, and then he starts writing inside the book. And I was like really irritated. I'm like, why is this guy writing in my book? So we went out to the car, and my wife, I said, what did he write in the book? And she looked, and she's like, oh, he signed it. That's the author. So then that was my first brush with Troy Taylor. And you're always pissed at this guy, defacing my book I just bought from him. But anyway, so then while we were staying out that weekend, I went back in there again and started to talk to him. And he told me about the tours that he did. So I started going, on his tour every once in a while, and then went on some of his longer excursions. And then he had contacted me about doing an investigation down in Southern Illinois with him. And we thought it was an investigation, which we were running like an hour and a half late. Turns out it was a dinner that they expected him to speak at. And he had no idea. And here we walk up, and there's a big flyer saying, an evening with Troy Taylor. And we're like, look at each other. I'm like, you're supposed to speak? And he's like, I guess. And we go in, and everybody had been waiting for us forever to get there.
Oh, no.
And so we get in there. We hadn't even ate yet or anything, and they're all finishing up, what they were eating. And I said, Troy, I'm like, what are you going to speak about? And he's like, wing it. And he got up there and talked over an hour, like it was nothing. Mm-hmm. And then we did the investigation.
The way he does.
Yeah, and the whole night we had these two older drunk sisters who were related to the people who owned this restaurant, and they're just following us the whole night, telling us all these stories and things. And so that was one of our first experiences together. But then, through doing a lot of events with them and different things, we became really good friends. And when he moved away from Alton area and moved to Decatur, the tours maybe were going to stop. There was nobody really to do them. Mm-hmm. And Len Adams, he had been on the tours so many times, he started doing the tours. And then, they were selling out so quick that we were in Louisville going to Waverly Hills, and we were all sitting at the Spaghetti Factory having dinner, and we're like, we should double up on tours, do 2 tours a night on the weekends. And so then at that point, I was the guy to step in and do it. I'd been on the tours so many times. I knew the stories. I had my own experiences. So it was just a common, a natural step, I think. And but yeah, so I've known Troy since about 2001 when he was just some dude behind the counter, writing the book. But we became very good friends since.
That's great. Now you're known for writing the humorous, the lighter side of the paranormal. Has there ever been an experience that you've had that has just terrified you? Have you ever just been really, really scared?
There was actually on the tours. There was a tour that I was doing where it was actually for some coworkers. It was a private tour, and we were in the First Unitarian Church, and I had everybody in the back worker room and told the stories, and that was the end of the night. And I told people, I said, you guys, if you want to take pictures, go ahead, but nobody go beyond these doors. Stay in the worker room or in the sanctuary, and once you're done, just make your way up to the front and we'll leave. So after about 15 minutes, it looked like everybody was up front, so we all made our way up there and went out the door. And there was this young girl who was standing on the steps. I knew she was part of the tour, but she wasn't somebody I knew. And she's just standing by herself, and I said, who are you here with? And she said, Ryan. And I said, well, where's he at? And she said, I don't know. And I'm like, well, call his cell phone, find out where he's at. So she calls him, and I hear her say, what are you doing down there? Which meant that Ryan went into the basement of the church by himself, which, the tour guides would never do that by themselves, just too eerie. Oh. And I said, well, tell him to come upstairs, and we'll go get him. And so she told him to come back upstairs, and I grabbed 2 people to come in with me because I wasn't coming by myself. And we went into the back worker room, and we're waiting for Ryan to come. We could hear him coming up the basement stairs. We hear the door open. He turns his corner and starts coming towards us. And I said, Ryan, what were you doing? And he said, I just wanted to see the basement. I said, okay, it's time to go. So he starts coming towards us. Now, he had already taken 3 or 4 steps towards us when you see the shadow figure come out of the hall. So it was following him up from the basement. And the way I tell this story, I have to put it this way, because I was born in 1977 and my name was Luke, so I had no choice but to be a Star Wars fan. If you've ever seen episode 1, when Darth Maul is waiting for Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan to come through the force field so he can kill them, that's how the shadow looked to me. Not that it was going to kill him, although it would have been a much cooler story. It was more of a thing where he was somewhere he wasn't supposed to be, and the shadow was making sure he left. So the shadow's pacing back and forth, like left and right, menacingly. I mean, he's coming this way, but the shadow's going like this. And I said, Ryan, it's time to go. Come on. So Ryan took off towards us. He knew something was wrong. One of my volunteers I brought in, he took off. The other one tried to, and I horse-collared him, yanked him back. And I said, do you see that? And he said, the shadow. And I said, yeah. And I said, let's go check it out. And this will sound funny, but it's true. When somebody doesn't want to hear, like, do something, you can actually hear their butt pucker. And you can just hear this creaking noise of like everything just tightening up, you know? It's true. And like, you know, let's go check it out. And like, you just tense like aluminum foil. And we started to walk back to where this was. And once we got back to the area where the shadow was, it was gone, of course, you know. And but when we walked in that area, it was just cold, you know, freezing cold. It was there for about 5 seconds. And then it was gone. And I said, I've never felt threatened here, but you know when it's time to go, and this is that time, so let's get out of here. So we left. Now, one of the rules about the church is you always leave it the way you found it, and they have a pocket door that divides the sanctuary from the worker room, and we had left that pocket door open. It's supposed to be closed. So I said, oh man, I gotta go back in there and shut that door. And I said, does anybody want to go in with me? And the people who were outside saw the guys running out, so they were not coming in. And of course, the guy who I made go back with me, he wasn't coming in. So I had to go in by myself. And the whole time, the way that this area is set up is the pocket door shoves into the wall to the left, that hallway's to the right. So I had my back turned trying to pull that pocket door out of the frame. I knew if I turned around, whatever this was going to be watching me or whatever. And finally got the door shut. Don't remember my feet touching the floor all the way out the sanctuary and out the front door. So again, I mean, it wasn't a thing where physically anything happened to me, but it was a very eerie feeling of time.
My spine's getting cold listening to you.
Yeah, it was time to go. So, yep.
Wow.
We had to let Luke go at that point because he was in the middle of an investigation at the theater. But you can keep the party going. If you enjoyed my conversation with Luke, do be sure to pick up his books, which are available through Whitechapel Press, and they're available on Amazon. Again, the titles to look for are The Lighter Side of Darkness, Ghosts Never Say Boo, and Lights Out, More True Tales of Ghosts from the Lighter Side of Darkness, all by the talented and very funny Luke Naliborski. I'll see you around the corner next time we go Lights Out.